the title, The Ecstasy of Truth, Concepts in India's Science of Consciousness. And this comes from Vedic Sanskrit, where there is the word Urtavik, which means the priest who has responsibility for the sacrifices. And this comes from two Vedic Sanskrit words, Urta, which has also survived in classical Sanskrit, which means truth, and V, ecstasy. So there's a K which makes a person who has this concept. So the priest is the embodiment of the ecstasy of truth, which I think is good. Next, thank you. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a bit of introduction about some scientific folklore, and then I'm going to suggest that there is an Indian science of consciousness, which has an experimental apparatus, which is meditation, and then it has a theoretical basis, which I'm going to base on the doctrine of Maya. And I'm going to do a couple of mantras from the Kena Upanishad and the Mundaka Upanishad. And I'm going to talk about metrical space and the attention point and their relationship. Okay, now after Schopenhauer. Schrödinger. Yes, the folklore is that the fathers of quantum mechanics were all terribly interested in Indian concepts of consciousness. Now, the only person that that's really true of is Schrödinger, because he wrote two essays, one in 1925 and the other in 1960, which was 1 year before he died, where he says explicitly that he was basing his concept on Vedanta. But the authority that he gives for this is Schopenhauer, even in 1960. And so Schopenhauer is a well-known fan of Vedanta. So in the whole world, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. And then he says this very strange thing: it's the most rewarding and the most elevating book which can be possible in the world. Well, there are 108 Upanishads, canonical. There are perhaps 200 in total. Even the ones embedded in the Vedas, there's 13 of them. So what does he mean? Next, please. He means this. This is the book that he had, which is called Upanishad, which is a deformation of the word Upanishad in Persian. And you see it's in Latin. It's in a very strange Latin that he invented, which he puts Greek elements in and also Persian elements. And he says that it is about Indian theology and philosophy. So next slide. The reason for that is that it's a translation of this work. This is a page of his copy of it. And it's by this prince, Prince Dara Shikoh, the 17th century Mughal prince. He was the crown prince. And what this is a Muslim version of the Upanishads. Okay, he worked with Sufis who were influenced by Indian thought. They practiced a simple form of yoga, and they meditated. They learned this from Hindu people. And so he put together a team of some learned Indian pandits and some Muslim theologians, and they created this hybrid form of the Upanishads, in which, for example, Krishna becomes a Muslim prophet, and Vishnu becomes an angel in the Quranic system. And so he was murdered by his younger brother, because otherwise he might well have wanted to impose the system on India and basically tell all the Hindus that they are in fact Muslims, which would have solved the problem. Okay, next. Now this is Schopenhauer's copy of this book, and you see that it's got all of these notes here. And he says every word of this is so great. And so what the French translator or editor has done is to try and replace the Muslim elements with Christian elements, so that he wants to turn this into a Catholic document. And so that is what Schopenhauer is working on. And he said there's this other letter here, all this handwriting. And Schopenhauer's ideas about it. And this here, on this sample page, is the only sentence that actually comes from the Upanishads, that comes from the Sanskrit original. So I don't think this was a very good guide, really, to Indian thought. Schrödinger was using. Next, please. So now, I'm going to suggest that there is a stable Indian science of consciousness. The experimental apparatus we've already seen. I'm sure there's been a lot more about this. So this is the language. So in Vedic Sanskrit, D is the original term, which means a sort of inspired vision. It's associated with the goddess Saraswati, everyone's favourite Hindu goddess. Goddess of learning, letters, and inspiration. That formed then Jai, and this went to Jnana, which is kind of the stable form in classical Sanskrit, and that's used in yoga, for example, to mean meditation. This had one interesting further adventure, because this was then taken to China by Mahayana Buddhism, where they didn't have a word for meditation because they didn't have the concept, and so it's impossible to pronounce in Chinese, so they tried to transliterate it as Chana. There's a strong preference in classical Chinese for single syllable words. So this was then shortened to this Chan, which then was taken to Japan, and this became Zen. And so I think that's really amazing that this Iron Age Indian concept and word should make it to medieval Japan, you know, with samurai and geisha girls. And so it shows the real centrality of meditation to the whole project. Now this is the mechanism. The original form of meditation was staring into the fire. So you have to imagine that this was the whole centre of your belief system. So in addition to just, you know, the advantage of looking at the fire as a meditational object, you would also believe that it was this intense experience that you were having. But then they made this great discovery, which I think is the eureka moment, actually, of this, which is to realise that you don't need the fire, that you can just meditate internally, and you'll have the same results in terms of random meditator, and that this is in fact a better method. So this has been the experimental method ever since. You start off by having some object you meditate on to train you, and then once you've learned how to do it, then you can just meditate internally by various methods, repetition of mantras and whatever it is. Okay, so now the theoretical basis. The experimental part came first, and I think the theoretical part was developed to explain these experiences, these intense experiences that people are having with meditation. And it's principally done in the Upanishads, but there was a lot of divergence because the Vedic Sanskrit is very hard to understand. If you look at 3 different translations, you'll see how divergent they are. And this is also true of the Upanishads. And so then there was a very famous sort of rediscovery in the 8th century with this man, Adi Shankara, and he was a kind of child prodigy, and he edited in particular the Brahma Sutras and made a sort of cleaner version of this, which is the basis of Advaita Vedanta ever since, really. Okay, next. Now, I think this is the place that really you should start. This is a great work of scholarship, Prabhupada Shastri, The Doctrine of Maya, published in 1911 in London, but it was published by the India office. And he was a great scholar of Sanskrit, but also of Western philosophy. And to prepare this work, he read all of the Vedas and the embedded Upanishads, and marked every place that the word Maya occurred, but also every place that the concept of Maya occurred. And he discusses all of the principal developments in Hindu thought, and also covers Buddhism a bit, but these are separate treatment I don't have time for. Next, please. Sorry, there's one. This one, yeah. So these are his main conclusions. He says that the word Maya has changed its meaning, And so that the familiar meaning of veil or apparent illusion was only fully stabilized in Shankara's reformulation. But he says that there's this concept of Maya that was already present in the later parts of the Rig Veda and was formulated in the Upanishads. Therefore, one can reasonably talk about a stable doctrine of Maya and model of consciousness. Now, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, who became the second president of India, and who is well known because it was the inspiration for Teachers' Day, and he actually published a sort of refutation of this, and he said, no, that the Shankara reformulation was because of the effect of Buddhism. And, you know, I think that we can say that both of these are true, actually. Also, before leaving him, I'd like to mention his concept of Indian science. He says that whereas Western science proceeds by falsification, which is a great invention, obviously, falsification, he says that Indian science does not proceed like this. It proceeds by ever deeper intuition into the same thing. And so you could call it truthification rather than falsification. Okay, Kena Upanishad. This is one of the main mantras that looks at the concept of the self. So it should be chanted, I suppose. Kenashitam patati prasitam manaha, kena pranaha pratmaha, praiti yuktaha, keneshitam vachami mam vadanti, chakshu shrotam, tau deva yunakti. More or less. Who orders that the mind flies where it wishes? Who sends out the first united breath? Who orders that this desired speech be uttered? What shining being, in fact, commands the eyes and ears? Shining being is Deva, which means it's often translated as God, but literally it's a shining being. And I think it's relevant here because in this concept of the self, the self is said to be self-illuminated, so shining by itself. And yes, this is the opening of this approach. Next. Now, this is my personal interest in this. This is a diagram that I presented in Taormina, which was a purely mathematical concept, actually. But when I started looking into the Vedanta, I realized that what I had produced was a very orthodox model of Vedanta Hindu concept of the self. And to show that, I've taken all the labels off it, which I had, all the footnotes and everything. But instead we can have Sanskrit, and somebody can read that, and then, right, yes, this one. These are some translations and transliterations. So this is the Atman, this is the Brahman. These are two, this is from Adi Shankara, power projection, power concealment, Maya, and this is very important here, Dushti, the attention point. So next. So we'll look first on the left, Atman. Now, my concept here is that these are flows of information that come in, and at the center there is this central structure, which is the Atman. So different schools of Indian thought give different names to this. Well, the previous speaker talked about the Purusha, in which case the other side is the Prakriti. It can be the Jiva. And the Mundaka Upanishad is divided into three parts for different aspects of consciousness. And also it can be the Ishvara in theistic conceptions like in yoga, for example, which means the Lord or the Master, Madhva, which actually is closest to my original terminology, which was hegemonical, which is from Hellenistic Greek philosophy of mind, and means master point. Next. Now, I was very pleased to find this in the Mundaka Upanishad, which is meant to be a sort of postgraduate text to teach consciousness to priests, to teach them the sort of finer points. Now, I don't know, I said this is Gayatri. Gayatri should really have three sections, but So Ara Iva Agra Hanabal Samhata Yatra Nadyaha Sa Eson Slutash Charate Badulha Jamayamana. And it says, like spokes at the hub of a wheel, the nerves converge. Within that place, the Atman is born in manifold appearance. So this is difficult to understand, and as I said, you look at different translations, you're going to get different things. But I think this is the sense of it. So that's very close to what I've said, really. So the Atman is born here. Now I left out actually a sort of universe for this, because these are meant to be hyperreal vectors, in fact. And I couldn't think what was going to be at the other end of the vectors, because that depends on what general theory you have. And so if you're going to have something based on, I don't know, microtubules and quantum mechanical functions, to pick an example wildly out of thin air, it's difficult to think what the actual boundary could be. But the Indian concept has the answer. There is no boundary. The boundary is the Brahman, which is infinite dimensional, outside time and space, and so on. Okay. Next. So now we go on to the this central part, and this is, as I said, from Adi Shankara. So there are two Shakti, two powers, which make up this division between this world and the world of Maya. And they are divided, so I put them as two axes. The pair of concealment, the best analogy I've seen for this is a dusty mirror. If you look in a mirror, it will reflect accurately. If it's covered in dust, it will reflect badly. Yes, so that's normally what you think of as the veil of Maya, the veil of illusion. But also you have this other thing, projection. And the classical example of this in India is the rope and the snake. That you see a rope on the ground, and because you're not seeing it, you project from your mind the snake. And in fact, the idea is that the entire universe is the snake, and that everything that you're doing, everything that you see, is projected. And this includes your mind, your actions, your morality, all kinds of abstract things. We think of as abstract. And so these are defined by the final structure we talk about here, which is this drishti. This is a term that's used in yoga. And so, for example, if you are looking into the fire, or there's a more modern form of that, which is looking at a candle flame, you're placing your attention point on the candle flame. And you, in yoga, you'll also put it on in different parts of your body. But what it really does is it defines this space of Maya. So this space of Maya is defined by these two functions, these two powers. And anything that you can put your attention point on is in Maya. It's so anything, any emotion, any physical feeling, anything like that, it's all in this space of Maya. And the reason for that is that Maya, this is again from Dr. Shastri, it comes from a Vedic Sanskrit root, ma, which means to measure. So this is measured space. It's space which can, in principle, be measured. And when you talk about Vedanta being Advaita, non-dualist, that means that anything which is dual can, in principle, be measured. So you can have, good or bad. You can have something which is better or worse. You can impose some system scale of measurement. And so the Atman, you cannot do that. Okay. Next. It's the last one. Yeah, this is the identification of the subject and the object. This is to create samadhi. So back to this, there's a little animation. Yeah, so when you can learn to place the attention point inside the Atman, that is the aim of meditation. It's the aim of the whole system, is that when you do that, then you will defeat the both dimensions of Maya, and they will dissolve, and you will achieve what is variously called self-realization, or bliss, or moksha. Okay, thank you very much.
Excuse me, just one question.
Sure.
You mentioned back earlier about this youth who had memorized a lot of the sacred texts and died at the age of 30.
Yes,
Now,
Adi Shankar.
my question is, what was he, after he had memorized these texts, how did he spend his life, and why would he die at the age of 30 if his spiritual exercise would help him?
No, he spent the rest of his life, according to legend. I mean, you know, this is 1,000 years ago. That painting was painted 1,000 years after he died, so it's, you know, probably not terribly accurate.
So he spent the rest of his life doing what?
No, it's probably, he spent his life, according to the legends, walking around India, founding ashrams, and trying to explain his understanding to people. So he felt that he had completed his sort of intellectual work, if you like, and that then his job after that was to spread the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chris.